looking back at your period of non-monogamy now as a happily married man, woman of your dreams, does that reframe that sort of experience? Do you have a different sort of view of non-monogamy generally now? Was it just part of a journey? Where's your headspace at with that?
It was definitely part of a journey. It was definitely part of like a deep learning practice. I mean, we all have jealousy to a certain extent. It's just inherent. And if you think you're not jealous, I dare you to get into a non-monogamous relationship where your sweetheart is getting fucked by somebody else and you're home alone and just imagining what's happening. Like, if you can do that, like, fucking get an ashram somewhere. Like, I don't know. I don't know what it takes to be able to handle that. But, so you really confront the dragon. You confront the dragon of your own jealousy. Like, the thought of me being jealous in my current relationship now with Vylana is absolutely preposterous because I've lived the worst case scenario. Like, I've lived the absolute nightmare of jealousy so many times that I'm liberated from that. It's just not in the spectrum of possibility of what I would actually worry about. And that's one of the beautiful things that you'll get from it. And that's what happens when you go head first into your deepest fears or your deepest challenges. It's like the ayahuasca of jealousy. Right? You're in it. So that's beautiful. It's also beautiful that, I got to experience so many amazing people. And actually, I was only able to meet my wife and become friends because I had the freedom of a non-monogamous container. Like, if I wanted to go out on a friend date or whatever with Vylana, like, there was never any question because I had multiple other girlfriends. So it's not like there was an issue, like, I was really free. So I think it's a great path to overcome jealousy. It's also a great path if you're not quite sure. I loved Whitney a lot, but something wasn't just quite right. She's amazing. Whitney's fucking incredible, but it wasn't quite right for either of us. And we've both actually subsequently, since splitting, we're still friends, but both of us have really come into our own in a beautiful way. She's a country singer now, and she's like using her voice and she's recording songs, and songs are amazing. And I always wanted her to sing, but in our relationship, that never emerged. Like, there was ways in which we weren't clicking for each other's future. So the fact that we chose non-monogamy was perfect because we were both free to explore different people and learn different things. And it was beautiful. I got to meet some amazing, amazing humans, Stephanie and Savannah and Maya and so many like awesome people that I'm just so grateful that I got a chance to experience. So that, those are the benefits of it. We also made a lot of mistakes. One of the things that non-monogamy requires is perfect, blisteringly honest communication. Like, any little way in which you're withholding the truth explodes into a nightmare. So it's also great for practicing your honesty. Like, you really have to, if you have feelings for somebody or you think something, you feel something, you have to express it because the only safe place you have is the truth. And as soon as the truth gets a little twisted, everything is in question and nothing makes sense and you're just lost. So it's kind of a forging process. Can I see it as a viable long-term solution? I can, but it requires the very best. It requires a group of people who are operating at their very best in heart and mind and spirit. And I think it can be a really beautiful, sacred, non-monogamous union. I was never quite good enough, to be honest. I was never able to really get there. And I tried hard, 8 years, and I gave it everything I got. I was not the type of person that was capable of holding that indefinitely. I never transcended my jealousy. I never got to the place of compersion, which is getting pleasure from someone else's pleasure sustainably. Like, if Whitney's having a orgasmic, blissful experience with another lover, I was never like, oh, babe, I'm so happy for your orgasmic, blissful experience. Oh, are those handprint bruises on your ass. It must have been passionate when he was spanking you that hard. I love that you were that into it with him. No, I was never like that. I wanted to vomit, I couldn't do it, so, but that doesn't mean that it's not possible to do. It doesn't mean that my failures mean that the whole construct is flawed, because I think the construct is beautiful. But for me, it was just too hard.
I think there's definitely a difference in my mind between using it as a tool to prepare yourself for a potential future relationship and attaching your colors to the mast pole and saying, right, this is me for the remainder of time. Yeah. In my experience, spending a lot of time around a lot of people, you need to be an incredibly unique individual for that to be the right path for you to go down long term. I mean, even for you to go down it for 2 weeks, you need to be a pretty unique individual. But for you to be able to look back after potentially an entire lifetime of non-monogamy and say, yes, that was the right choice, I think that you have to be very, very, a significant outlier. And I also think that there's probably far fewer people than actually think it. And what's reassuring to hear, what's kind of nice to hear from yourself is that, look, like, this is something that you can perhaps consider or try or look at, but it's not for life. You're not married to the non-monogamy for life. Yep. If you want to bail out, if you want to make an exit plan at some point, you can do that. And yeah, one thing that I had in my mind, so you've mentioned about the fact that the jealousy was one of the sort of key emotions that you struggled with, and that this was kind of like exposure therapy for jealousy, turned up to 1 million. Is there any part of you that has echoes of that? Because that can be so traumatic to the point where it starts to embed a habit, it starts to embed a routine, that the jealousy actually starts to rear its head, and it's got all of this foundation and this power and this velocity behind it, because look at all of the things that you've done in the past. Do you ever notice that? Do you ever feel that?
The thing about it is, the jealousy, I think jealousy becomes really toxic when it's imagined, right? Like imagined jealousy. You're just thinking, and you're waiting for this dishonest way in which someone is betraying you.
Is that because
you didn't know?
Do you think that's because of the shame or the guilt around the fact that you know that there's a part of it that's not true, and that there's almost a little bit of it that's making it your fault? If the jealousy doesn't actually exist, if there's no real reason for it to be there, the shame because it's you that's causing it.
Yeah, I think that's a factor. I also think that's the difference between polyamory and just a regular relationship where you're jealous. A lot of times in a regular relationship where you're jealous, you're just creating all kinds of fantasies of things that are not real. And so you pattern this fantastical creation of these jealous circumstances. This is what you see all the time. Were you looking at that girl? Do you have what are you doing with that trainer? Like, do you like him? You're like, blah, blah, blah. And like, no, he's just my friend, like, blah, blah, blah. So you're creating all these fantasies. The beauty of what I experienced was it was all real. Like, she was really having blissful orgasmic experiences with men for real, and would tell me about it, as because we're honest. And then she was really falling in love with her boyfriend, Ricky, and really, like, all of these things were really happening. So while it was hard, it was honest. And I think anything that's hard and honest is productive and not traumatic. It's just productive, right? It's kind of like going into a sweat lodge. Like, I don't know if you've ever done like a really intense Temescal or sweat lodge.
No.
Pitch dark, you're in there 3 hours, no water. It's just prayers and heat, and they're pouring water on these steaming rocks. And you feel at certain points, if it's a hard lodge, like, I don't know how I'm going to survive this. Like, I don't know. This is so hot, and I'm so thirsty, and I'm like just overwhelmed with this. And if you're with a real master, they know where the edge is, and they never obviously push it. And of course, you could wave the white flag and be like, I'm not. And they always make allowances for that, because it can be dangerous. But ultimately, that's a super challenging experience. But you never leave that traumatic. You leave that exhilarated, because it's honest. You chose it. You know what it is. and you endure it, and you come out and you're like rebirthed from the fire. And that's kind of the way that it is with polyamory. It's like, it's real. It's like a sweat lodge. Like, you know when your partner is with that other person, and you know what's happening. And what's happening is worse than you hope, but not as bad as you fear, right? Always. That's like the universal rule. It's worse than you hope, but not as bad as you fear. But that's what's happening. And so it's intense, but it's not traumatic. What's traumatic is like discovering an adultery. Like my wife had a lot of trauma. She was monogamous, but on 2 of her birthdays, she found out that her boyfriend had impregnated another woman that he was seeing on the side.
The same boyfriend?
2 different ones.
2 different boyfriends, both on a birthday?
Both on her birthday. She found out. What are the fucking chances of that? That's
happy birthday,
traumatic.
darling.
Yeah, happy birthday. I'm not going to be here because I'm getting an abortion with this other girl that you didn't know I was seeing.
Fuck.
Like, that's where the trauma comes from. Like, that's what imprints like deep trauma.
Because of the lack of
Whereas
truth.
if it's the lack of truth. Whereas the other thing is it's just a really difficult initiation. And that's kind of how I feel. So I actually look back at that, as hard as it was. I look back at that and there's like almost a sense of pride. Like, yeah, I fucking did that. I did that. I tossed and turned and I wrestled in my bed and I puked and I cried and I prayed to God and I made it through, and like, I did it. Like, fuck yeah. It's like running an ultra marathon. It's hell, but I never run one, but I can imagine. I don't like running like 2 miles, let alone fucking 100. But it's the same thing. Like, it breaks you down, but you're proud. You're proud that you went through it because you knew what you were doing and you did it.
At the time, was it ever in your head that you were doing something to become ready for this sort of woman that you wanted to spend the rest of your life with?
No, because I didn't think the woman that I wanted to spend the rest of my life with existed. I thought maybe it was Vylana, but she never really gave me any indication that she was interested in that type of relationship until she did. I thought like maybe, but I didn't know her that well intimately, like I knew her as a friend, but there was still a lot of boundaries, that she always had. She was very loyal to the people she was seeing. And so I thought like, look, here's my options. Either I compromise with one person, or I just stay non-monogamous, continue to work on my jealousy, get to be with a bunch of different beautiful people, and I get to experience life. And my sacred union is with the great beloved, like Rumi talks about, like all of creation, woman with a capital W embodied in many different women. I really believe that was my future. And actually, interestingly, I think I finally got to the place, like right before Vylana and I got together, I was like, I think I did it. I'm fucking happy. Like, I did it. I'm happy. And like, I didn't mind that Whitney was, in love and seeing her guy still. I really didn't bother me that much. And she would go on dates and we'd laugh about it. And I had a bunch of different dates that I was going on. And I was like, I think I made it. I think I fucking made it. And then Vylana came in and I was like, oh my God, this is the path for me. So it took me by surprise. I just didn't want to ever compromise. I never wanted to compromise. And Vylana was the absolute, there are no compromises. It's like I had a bingo card with 100 different squares and the balls kept coming out and I hit every single one, 100 out of 100. And I'm like, whoa, I didn't think that was possible. But it was for me. And I don't know if it is possible for everybody.
The reason that I say it is I've been thinking a lot recently, talking to some friends about sort of becoming the man that you want your future wife to fall in love with, creating the life that you want to bring your children into the world for, being in the place, doing the work with the people, with the connections, with the skill set, with the mindset, with the balance, with the understanding of yourself, and so on and so on. And it seems to me that as people get married or make commitments to their life partners later and later, this is a luxury that we now have. And this is one that I don't really hear very many people talking about. The opportunity to not only treat your 20s and, you know, whatever period up until you finally find the person you want to be with as time to explore and learn about you and work out who you are, but also to become the person that you want that family to be built upon, especially as a man, right? You know, sort of load it up on my back. Like, I'll continue carrying, like, put more on, put more weight on, put more weight on. It's like, well, if you haven't spent sufficient time being able to build up your tolerance, you're not going to be able to bear a very heavy load. And yeah, I wonder, I think there's something there. I think there's something there for men in a crisis of masculinity age to think, okay, maybe you're not getting married at 19 to the daughter of next door's farmer, like, anymore. Maybe that's not happening. But if you are a romantic, if you do want to lead a life in service of a family, if you know that you want to be a father, if you know that you want to be the head of a household, a leader, somebody that other people can look up to, part of your local community, to have impact both locally, familiarly, whatever, family, and in terms of your work and your contributions there, if you want to do that, you can spend your time preparing for that. You can spend time becoming that sort of person, being able to bear the load that you know eventually one day you're going to have to carry. And I haven't really heard much about that. And it seems to me, although it wasn't done, it definitely wasn't planned that way, in that, as you've just said, like, just as you thought you'd got it all sorted out, someone came in and, like, sideswiped you in an articulated lorry and completely fucked it all up again. And you're like, right, going in a different direction now.
Yeah.
But it certainly seems to me, sort of reflecting on the non-monogamy period, it looks like fucking prep school for marriage.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, I think we have a very comfortable life. We need to do hard shit. If we want to be the man that can really hold as an anchor and as a pillar in our family, we need to do hard shit. Polyamory is one of the hard things. And people don't really get it. But, like, to get the benefit of polyamory, like, there's the man's fantasy, right? Like, oh, you get to be with a bunch of girls. I'm like, yeah, I do. But I also, all of these girls that I have deep love and feelings for, they get to be with whoever the fuck they want. And I don't get to say no. You know, like that's the work. That's where you're really in it. And I think that's a hard thing. And that hard thing forges you. Like, this is the iron that sharpens iron. This is the pressure and the heat that makes diamonds. And it's just one of the ways. You know, I think the plant medicine path is another way. There's so many other ways that you can do, you know, athletics, doing hard things for your body, even a consistent cold plunge practice. Talk about just something daily that you can do, where you look at that cold plunge and you don't go like, yeah, but you walk in like a fucking king. That's what Charles Eisenstein says. He said, you look at that cold plunge and you walk in like a king. You know, none of this like, oh, it's cold, let me, just no, you walk in and you step in like a king and you drop down and you submerge and you start your breathing and you do it. Like, these things are all forging practices, and they make us who we are so that we're able to walk into those challenges and those difficulties, because they're all going to come. You know, whether it's you're in a business and everything goes into chaos, some crazy shit happens, and, you know, you have to fucking deal with the surprise element.